Jason, sensing that the mood between them had shifted and that the night was turning into something more than just a casual hangout, leaned back a little more on the couch, his posture relaxed. He watched Ben for a moment, his thoughts shifting as he considered how Ben seemed a bit more on edge now, even though they had been enjoying themselves just a few minutes ago. "Hey, Ben," Jason said softly, his voice a little more tentative than usual. "If you're feeling a bit uncomfortable or just want to relax more, I mean, this is your night too, right? You can make yourself at home. You want to grab a blanket or something?" Jason's offer hung in the air, gentle and nonchalant. But there was something in the way he said it, a sense of openness that made it clear he wasn't trying to push anything, just giving Ben an option to settle in more comfortably. He wanted Ben to feel at ease, to not have to worry about anything, to make this space his own too. Ben met Jason's gaze, his heart racing just slightly. He appreciated the offer. Jason was always so considerate, always aware of how others felt. But there was something else in his words that made Ben pause. The way Jason had said it, with a hint of care and subtle invitation, made Ben wonder if there was more behind it than just offering a blanket. Ben bit his lip, unsure for a moment. He could feel his nerves building again. The night had been so easy before, so carefree, but now there was a slight tension in the air. He wasn't sure if he should just brush it off or acknowledge it. Jason was just trying to make him feel comfortable, right? "Yeah, maybe a blanket would be good," Ben replied, trying to keep things light, but there was a small flutter of uncertainty in his chest. "I'm kind of cold now, actually." Jason didn't seem to notice the hint of hesitation in Ben's voice. He stood up, stretching his long legs and heading toward the small closet in the corner. As he walked, Ben's eyes trailed over him again, noting how effortlessly powerful Jason looked. There was something magnetic about his presence, the way he carried himself with such ease. It was hard not to notice. Jason returned with a thick, plush blanket and handed it to Ben with a grin. "Here, man. Make yourself comfortable." Ben took the blanket, his fingers brushing lightly against Jason's. The simple touch sent a jolt through him, and for a moment, he thought about saying something, anything, to break the silence, to ease the growing tension. But Jason sat back down beside him, close enough that Ben could feel the warmth of his presence without it being too much. Jason stretched out his legs again, looking over at Ben with a casual smile. "If you need anything else, just say the word." Ben nodded, wrapping the blanket around himself, though it didn't quite do much to calm his nerves. His mind kept wandering to the unspoken connection between them, the shift in energy that was hard to ignore now. He wanted to say something, to open up more, but his words caught in his throat. He could feel that Jason wasn't pushing, wasn't expecting anything, yet he couldn't help but wonder if Jason felt it too, the subtle change in the air between them. Jason turned his attention back to the TV, seemingly content, but Ben couldn't help but wonder if there was something more Jason was waiting for. A subtle invitation, something unspoken, but he wasn't sure how to navigate it. The room felt smaller now, and he realized it wasn't just the movie or the blanket, it was something deeper. The movie played on, but the air in the room felt a little thicker now, the silence between them a quiet hum. Ben, wrapped in the blanket, couldn't shake the feeling of being so aware of Jason's presence next to him. Despite the cozy atmosphere, there was an underlying tension, a strange pull between them that neither of them had fully addressed. Jason glanced over at Ben, noticing how he had pulled the blanket tighter around himself. The flickering TV light illuminated Ben's face, but his body language still seemed a bit tense, like he wasn't quite as relaxed as he could be. "You still cold?" Jason asked softly, his voice low and caring. He tilted his head, his eyes searching Ben's face, his tone filled with an unspoken kindness. Ben glanced over, caught off guard by the question. He wasn't sure how to respond. He wasn't cold in the way that made him shiver. But the warmth in Jason's eyes, the way he was looking at him so attentively, made him feel something. He couldn't put his finger on it exactly, but it was a softness, a care that made him feel both at ease and slightly vulnerable. He hesitated for a moment before answering. A little, I guess. He didn't want to sound too needy, but the blanket wasn't quite enough to ease the strange feeling growing inside him. Jason's gaze lingered on him for a moment, and then a small, almost playful smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Well, I could help with that," he said, his voice calm but suggestive, like he was offering something simple yet intimate. Ben felt his pulse quicken. He wasn't entirely sure if Jason was being serious, if this was just his way of joking around, or if there was something more behind the words. But the way Jason looked at him, the softness in his expression, made Ben feel like it wasn't just a casual offer. "I mean," Jason continued, his voice steady and comforting, "my body's warmer than the blanket, if you want to be more comfortable." The suggestion hung in the air, the room feeling a little quieter as Ben processed the words. There was no pressure in Jason's voice, just an offer, an invitation to share warmth, to make the night easier for Ben. And yet, something about it felt different. Ben's heart raced as he tried to read Jason's expression. Was this something more, or just Jason's way of being kind? He wasn't sure, but a part of him wanted to accept the offer, wanted to let himself be close to Jason in a way that felt natural, even though it made his mind swirl with uncertainty. After a brief pause, Ben finally spoke, his voice low and almost tentative. I guess I could take you up on that." The words felt strange coming out of his mouth, but he couldn't deny the curiosity, the warmth he felt at the idea of being closer to Jason in that way. Jason smiled gently, his gaze softening. "No rush," he said, as if reassuring Ben. "Only if you're comfortable with it." Ben nodded, his heart beating faster now, a mixture of excitement and nervousness building in his chest. As Jason leaned closer, the warmth of his body seemed to fill the space between them. Ben could feel his breath catch in his throat, unsure of where things were headed, but equally intrigued. Jason stretched out next to him, his body close enough now that Ben could feel the warmth radiating off him. It was comforting, inviting, and the tension between them seemed to melt away a little. Jason didn't make any further moves. He simply stayed there, offering the warmth he'd promised, giving Ben the space to choose how to respond. For Ben, it wasn't just the physical warmth that affected him. It was the feeling of being cared for, of not having to hide behind a wall, of someone being there without judgment. It was a gesture that, while simple, felt like something more, something deeper. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the TV, but the air between them felt charged. Ben could feel the warmth of Jason's body beside him, the steady rhythm of his breathing, and the pull between them that seemed to grow with each passing second. Everything felt suddenly more intense, more immediate, as if they were both caught in the quiet tension of the moment. Ben's heart beat faster as he glanced at Jason, who was still so relaxed, so comfortable. The warmth he had offered was more than physical now. It felt like a safe place, an invitation to be closer. There was no pressure, no rush, just a quiet openness that made Ben feel like he could take the next step if he wanted to. Without thinking, without fully understanding why, Ben found himself leaning toward Jason, his body drawn to the warmth and the quiet comfort of his presence. Slowly he let the distance between them close, and before he could second-guess himself, he shifted closer, gently leaning his head against Jason's chest. Jason's body tensed for just a moment, but then relaxed, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat seeming to sync with Ben's own. Ben could feel the warmth of Jason's skin beneath his cheek, the solid strength of his chest as it rose and fell with each breath. It was oddly soothing, like finding a place where everything else faded away, and for a moment, nothing mattered, except the quiet comfort of being close. Jason didn't say anything at first, but Ben could feel the slight shift in the air. It was as if the world had narrowed down to just the two of them in that moment. Ben's breath was steady now, but his mind was still racing. He hadn't expected this, hadn't known that something as simple as leaning against Jason's chest would feel so intimate. But it did. Jason's hand moved almost instinctively, gently resting on Ben's shoulder, his fingers brushing against his skin in a gesture of reassurance, of understanding. It wasn't an aggressive move, just a soft, protective gesture, as if Jason was silently saying, "I've got you. It's okay. Is this okay?" Jason's voice was quiet, almost a whisper, as if he was checking in with Ben, making sure he felt comfortable. There was no hint of judgment, no expectation, just a gentle, careful question. Ben nodded slightly, his face still against Jason's chest. "Yeah, it's good," he murmured, his voice a little softer than usual. The warmth of Jason's body, the steady presence of him, made everything feel more relaxed, more real.